Hey students, welcome back to Strategies of Missions and Leadership Development. Last time we looked at the contemporary issues with religions and cults, and today we're going to be looking at the next topic, which is language learning. Stay tuned for the PowerPoint.
Okay, class, we're now going to move into the PowerPoint portion of this lecture for Strategies of Missions and Leadership Development. And this is session 23, Language Learning. And this PowerPoint is not going to be as long, especially as the previous two that we just looked at. But what I want to show you is just some basics for strategy of language learning. So introduction, it is critical for the missionary to communicate effectively to or with the people group one is ministering to. I mean, I can't say it enough in regards to how a missionary or a person that I've been on mission trips, that it can be quite frustrating not to be able to communicate and understand what is going on in the people group. And so if a missionary is moving to this people group to live there, they need to be able to communicate effectively with them. So the level of communication is dependent on the type of mission, which I've explained in a previous PowerPoint. But when you think about this, it's definitely going to be the type of mission and the job that the person is doing on the mission in regards to how much communication that they need to be. Like, do they need to be fluent or not? So a short-term mission, and I just put this in here, let's say around 3 months or less. You know, if you're going on a mission trip with your church for 2 weeks, you know, you don't have to be fluent in the language that you're going to. Like I said before, like on mission trips that I've been to, I don't speak Spanish, but I was in Spanish countries, and you know, I was able to function perfectly well for the 2 weeks because I was able to learn a few phrases, and then also I did have an assigned interpreter with me. That was either the missionary that we were with, ministering with on that trip, but also someone in our church spoke fluent Spanish, and she was kind of assigned to me to be able to help me with interpretation. So short term, around 3 months or less, you can get by with basic phrases or having an assigned interpreter. But if you're going to be doing long-term missions, and again, it fluctuates more than 3 months, 6 months or more, 6 months to 5 years plus, you are definitely going to want to have increased competency to even being fluent. You want to be able to do that so that you're not going to be frustrated, you're not going to be lost, you're not going to be causing confusion with the way you're communicating, or you're confused. So you want to be able to have some sort of increased competency all the way to being fluent of 6 months to 5 years. And also, it's dealing with the missional job. Language competency can also be based on what you're doing. So a pastor or a church planter or someone that is like heavily involved with the people group that you're with or that you're in, you need to be fluent straight up. I mean, it's just the way it is. Facts are facts. You need to have fluency in the language. You need to be able to get up there and preach in the language of the people. You need to be able to get up there and counsel. You need to be able to go and be a church planter in the community. And this could be husband and wife, the pastor and the pastor's wife, or whatever it is. You need to be fluent in your language. But also, based on the position, if you're in a mission position that is more of a support staff, you might not need to be completely fluent in the language, but you must have some kind of a knowledge. And I used this example before of a cook that was in a camp in Austria. So they didn't need to know the language perfectly. They weren't up there preaching. They weren't interacting with some sort of large ministry position, but they were a support staff, and so they needed to be able to function with being able maybe to read somewhat of the language, maybe get by with some basic phrases, maybe something with the market where they had to go buy food or something to cook. So they might not need to be fluent, but they did have to have some knowledge. Or it could be IT or construction. They might not have to have extreme fluency, but some sort of basic knowledge of the language would be helpful. So it depends on the missional job also. Of course, you want your people in the field, whether that be you or someone you're working with, to be always increasing in their competency. Okay, so now let's look at language acquisition. There are levels of language acquisition. Now, this little chart here was developed by New Tribes Mission in 2006, and it kind of gives a nice, succinct look at language acquisition. So first off, when you begin, you're basic, you're a novice, and this is where someone's going to learn some words, maybe some short phrases, maybe during the training sessions, months and months leading up to a mission trip with your church. You're learning a few of the words. Where's the bathroom? Where's the church? Where can I get help or whatever. So basic phrases and words you learn. Well, you're a novice. You're a basic beginner, and you want to increase and you want to get better at that. But you might not need to be fluent if you're on a 2-week mission trip. But if you're going to be longer on the field, then obviously you want to progress. So that takes us to number 2, progressing or intermediate. This is where you're learning sentences, maybe some questions in daily life. How do I say this? How do I do that? You want to learn that in the language. Then you get to capable, which would be more advanced. And so this is where someone can learn, they know the paragraphs. Maybe they can speak in paragraphs or read paragraphs. They can have narratives. They can tell a story. They can say things. They can describe things. They can explain things. They begin using past, present, future tenses. So you're getting more advanced, and you can read and maybe understand these things. But then the last part of this chart is proficient or superior, or basically where you're fluent. You're having extended discourse with people. You can speak in different genres, such as you can tell a story, you can read poetry, you can explain the Bible, or whatever it is. You're having extended discourse. And so you have basic, progressing, capable, and proficient. And so this is how one acquires language through these steps. Now we're going to look at language acquisition, and this is going to be how one is going to learn the language. And this basically, the rest is PowerPoint, comes from Tom Steffen and Lois Douglas's book, Encountering Missionary Life and Work, Preparing for Intercultural Ministry, which was published in 2008, and I would definitely encourage you to look into this. But the information comes from here in regards to language learning. Well, first off is learning in the culture. Most missionary agencies require some level of language competency. However, the best way to learn a language is within the culture of the people group themselves. And so, yes, you can go to language school and learn it before getting to the field, but the best way to learn it is to be on the field and learning from the people themselves. Cultural language and competency. One of the best ways to learn the language and become competent in it is in the culture itself. And so that would be like getting around, how to get around in the culture, but also while getting around in the culture, you're learning from the culture, you're learning from the people, and connecting with people within the culture. Again, one of the things I had said about dealing with stress on the mission field is that it gets very stressful when you can't communicate with people. Well, when you're connecting with people, and the tendency then is to try to withdraw, you can't really understand the people, you can't connect with the people, so you withdraw from the people. Well, you can't do that on a mission. So you need to connect with the people. And then also you can learn the cultural language while handling the mission. You're there to do the work for the Lord. You're there on the mission field, and you handle the mission. So let's look at the 4 realms of language competency. Okay, so number 1 is the formal realm. This is where you're actually learning the words. You're learning the vocabulary. You're learning the sentence structure, the spelling, the sounds, reading, writing, speaking. This would be like formal education for language learning. You can almost say like you're going to school or language school for this. So that's formal. Number 2 is social. This is where, and you can learn some of these in the language school, but it's just the social things, the greetings, the types of address, who you address, how you address somebody, maybe an elder or somebody of a different sex. How do you address them? Emotions that you share. How somebody emotionally responds in our culture could be different in their culture. Social norms, my example there is like not interrupting. In the United States, if we're talking, we kind of talk back and forth, talking over people, trying to interject ourselves in the middle of a sentence. So that's something that we just do in our culture. But in another culture, you might stand there and listen the entire time before you even open your mouth, and then you can speak. So the social norms. So these are different ways of dealing with people in society and when it comes to do with language. Number 3 is discourse. changing in the type of speaking. So we change the way we speak in different ways in different situations that we have in our culture. So, you might be speaking informally to somebody. You might get in front of a class or get up on stage, and then you have to speak more formally. You speak differently when praying than when not praying. I mean, or your prayer life, speaking with the Lord compared to praying up in front of a church is different. It's definitely a different way of lecture. You speak a certain way with lecturing compared to having a conversation. If you get up to teach a theology course to your Sunday school class, you're going to be speaking differently than you would sitting around a table with coffee and so you're conversing. Or you're telling stories can be very relaxed or something like that. So there's different ways in speaking. And then fourthly is the strategic way, which deals with volume, rate of speech, paraphrasing, speaking skills. So are you speaking really fast, or are you speaking really slow and saying not so and your rate of speech gets interrupted by poor speaking skills. And so when I speak, I try not to use the word sometimes I do. When I preach, I usually don't use the word but sometimes I do. It's just the way things are. We want to be strategic in how we speak. So again, the rate of volume, we're not yelling at the person in their face, and we're using proper speaking skills. So formal, social, discourse, and strategic are the four realms of language competency. Now I just want to share a quick note about nonverbal language competency. So obviously learning a language is important to be able to speak, but we can also speak without using words. So nonverbal language is extremely important in cultures, and they widely differ among cultures. Sometimes the nonverbal speaks louder or loudly to the listener. So for example, let's say you're in a classroom environment and you're up there speaking, and you look at your student and they're yawning, they're slumped over, their hand is on their face, their eyes are closed. What is that saying? That says you're boring. That says that you have a student that's not even really paying attention or listening to you. So nonverbal can speak loudly to the listener. Also, eye contact, sitting up or forward in your chair, nodding your head. You can look at that student and be like, hey, they're into this. They're really paying attention. And their nonverbal communication is saying that. And so there's different ways that nonverbal actions speak loudly to the listener. Also, we are always speaking nonverbally. And what do you mean by that? Well, what that means is that we are always showing facial expressions, hand gestures, maybe shaking hands, looking away, looking intently at somebody, sitting, standing, moving away, maybe a kiss on the cheek. All of these different things that I just mentioned speak non-verbally, and we do them all the time. We show facial expressions all the time without even thinking, and so we can show disapproval, we can show excitement, we can show different things through our facial expressions, or we talk with our hands, or point, or give a thumbs up, just hand gestures. Maybe shaking hands when you come up to somebody. So you would need to know what's going on in the culture if that's acceptable. If someone's talking to you and you start looking away from them, they're going to say, well, this person's not even interested in me. Or if someone stands up when you walk into the room, well, they're showing you respect, and that's a way of nonverbal communication. But also, if you're in a culture that you do stand when someone walks in the room and you just remain seated, well, that could be offensive to the person. Or if you start moving away from them, you're distracted and you start looking at other things, especially in our culture where we start looking at our phones or whatever, I'm not just really interested in you or what you have to say. Or a kiss on the cheek, that's a nonverbal thing. You don't have to say anything, but if in some cultures, if you walk into a room, it's expected that you would go up and greet the person that's in the room with a kiss on both cheeks. So, if you don't do that, you've just committed a cultural violation, norm violation by not greeting with a kiss. And we're not used to that in our culture, but other cultures it's common. And so you need to be able to do that, and that's a nonverbal thing, and it can cause offense if you don't do it. So you need to learn these nonverbal forms of communication and what is the norm of that culture. Okay, language learning in you. This is basically the attitude that you have while learning a language. You need to know yourself for the best language learning. And like I mentioned, you have to have the right attitude. You have to be optimistic. If you're pessimistic about a language, you're going to have a very difficult time learning it. You need to be open to it. You need to be open to learning and understanding and the differences in language compared to what you know. You need to be optimistic and have a good attitude with language learning, because if you're like, man, this is just terrible, I hate this language, I don't know why I picked to go to this people group, they can't speak right. If you have the wrong attitude, it's going to be very difficult. So you need to have a right attitude. But also personality can play a role. With language learning, you can't be shy. You need to anticipate that you'll make mistakes. So if it's a person that's kind of a shy person, they don't want to be speaking in front of people, the person is scared to death of making mistakes and being embarrassed, and so they kind of shy away from all of that stuff. That's not going to be good for language learning, because guaranteed 100% you're going to be making mistakes. Right now I'm learning German, and my German this morning, I had 15 things to do and I made 2 mistakes, and it's just I had something that I had to correct. You have to anticipate that you'll make mistakes. You can't be shy about it, especially when you're learning a language with other people. Next is thinking style. What type of thinking style do you have? Are you a linear learner? And what that means is like very structured, one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, which is how I am as a learner. I like that very orderly, structured way of learning. That can be very difficult when it comes to, let's say, quote unquote, rules of the language. And so my example here for us is obviously in English. And just imagine someone coming to the United States and having to learn English and all the rules that we have in English that make no sense, but it's just the way we are, and we've learned it since we've been children, learning our language, and so it makes sense to us, but it's not going to make sense to somebody else. And so here's a couple of examples. We say goose for a singular, but when there's more than one goose, we say geese. We say, look at that flock of geese. But then when we say moose for a singular moose, we don't say meese for more than one moose. We don't say meese. That doesn't make any sense. But to someone learning English, it'll be like, why don't you say meese? You say geese, you should say meese. So it can be very frustrating for somebody. Mouse, singular, mice, plural. House, singular, we don't say heis. We don't say, hey, look at all those heis over there in the development. No, we say, look at all those houses. So again, it doesn't make any sense, but that's the way we talk. Dove for the bird versus dove into the water. We wouldn't say dove into the water. So, you can see just a couple of examples there. I think it could be probably very frustrating for someone learning English, and that's just a tiny bit of how we speak. So if you're a linear learner and you're having difficulty with quote unquote rules of language, you need to be anticipating that, understand that there are different ways and different rules within different languages. So thinking style, but also commitment. You, and you know that if you commit to something, how long you commit to it. So we live in a world of like New Year's resolutions. On January 1st, we've resolved to live healthy. We're going to eat healthy. We're going to exercise every day. Well, you know what? That takes commitment. And if you can only deal with something for like a week and then you go back to the old ways, you may have difficulty with language learning, because you need to be committed to language learning and to you need to have a strategy for your language learning, have some kind of a calendar or some sort of a structured way of sticking to the commitment, and also sticking to the task of language learning. If you get into language school, you're going to have all these tasks that you need to do. You need to be committed to those tasks. So how is your commitment level as a person? So language learning and you. And now let's finish this up with just some practical steps for language learning. Number one, learn as much about the culture before you leave for the culture. You need to know the norms. You need to know what the culture makeup is. Where are you going to get your food? At a grocery store or a market? At a grocery store, you might not converse with anybody except the cashier. But in a market, you may be talking with different people at different stalls. So you're learning much about the culture before you leave. Again, that's a simple example. Number two, find a language school. Most missions agencies will have you go to language school before you even go to the field, so you're somewhat competent. So this may be before you go to the field, or even after going to the field. You may get into the field and continue in language school or whatever it is, however the setup is, but you need to find a language school. Number 3, you develop a network of learners and learned. So the learners are fellow students, and you can help one another, you can share with one another, study with each other, quiz one another, but also the learned. You need to have a network of people that know the language, and they can help you, they can teach you. That could be a formal teacher of the language, or it can be someone in the field with you that is fluent. Number 4 is explore the culture. So once you get on the field, you want to get immersed in the culture, go to the market, go to sporting events, get a newspaper, listen to the TV, whatever. You want to be able to immerse yourself in the culture and explore the culture. But while doing that, you want to be an active observer. Number 5, an active observer of the culture. So when you go to the market, let's say, you want to build in flexible time in social settings. So you don't want to be like, well, I have a half hour in the market, so I need to get in there and get out. If it's going to take you a half hour in the market, spend an hour there. You go into the market to learn. Get your job done, buy the things you need to buy, but build in time, flexible time that, hey, it might take me longer at this stall because I want to learn about this item that they have at the market. Maybe how to purchase it, how much, what is the money system there? Is it in the weights and measures? Is it by it buys so much fruit by the pound or whatever it is. You want to have flexible time to be able to talk to the person there and learn about that. Secondly, of active observer is have an observation plan when in the social setting. What do you want to talk to the person about? Again, let's say it's the market environment. What do you want to talk about? You want to learn about the fruit. You want to learn what it's used for, what recipes it can be used in, how much it is a pound. You want to have a plan. So when you get to that social setting, you're not just like stumbling through and lost, and then when you leave, it's like, oh, I should have asked them this, I should have asked them that. So number 3, have questions ready to explore that setting. And then number 4, take notes or journal. So maybe when you are there, you can jot some things down on a notepad, a little handheld notepad, or when you get home, you can journal that and write it down so you can continue learning as an active observer in that culture to learn the language. And then number 6, have an ongoing fluent language coach. Have somebody in the society. It could be another missionary, or it could be someone from that people group that is bilingual, and maybe they speak English, that you have this ongoing relationship with. They're fluent, and they can kind of coach you through continuing with this language learning. Okay, so that's it for this PowerPoint. I'll see you in a second.
Okay, class, that's it for this lecture. Next time, we're going to be looking at our next topic of contemporary strategies, and that is going to be dealing with oral learners. Have a great day.